everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, joined here, as always, by Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
I am wonderful. How are you?
I'm good, but as I was doing the intro, I forgot how I normally did the intro, and that's why it was different. I don't know if this is a good sign or a bad sign for the show. I don't know that it could possibly be a good sign, though. Yeah, I'm doing well. Doing pretty good. Ready to talk about some football stuff. Did you have anything else to talk about other than football?
No, everything other than football right now seems kind of terrible. So let's just talk about football, which is good. Football, consistently, always good.
Perfect. Tom, first up, I want to discuss this news that broke since the last time we recorded, where Alabama and Ohio State have decided, you know what? Let's play during the regular season. And even better, let's do it a home and home. Let's play on campus. Enough of this neutral site in Atlanta, in Jerry World, in Mobile, Alabama. No, let's go to Columbus and let's go to Tuscaloosa. And so they decided, yep, let's do that. We'll do it in 2027 in Columbus and 2028 in Alabama. And I'm pretty excited about this. It's about time that these two get together rather than, and I'm sure they'll play in the playoffs before then, but you love to see it.
Well, it was, of all the non-conference schedules they could have done, Alabama has to be top 2, top 3. A home and home with Clemson would be cool, but Alabama, other than Clemson, I don't know who else you would really have that high on the list. If you had asked me 10 years ago, who would you love to see Ohio State do a home and home with, I would have probably put Georgia on the list, Alabama, Oregon, LSU, and right now LSU is the only one of those that is not on a future Ohio State schedule. They have some monster games lined up over the next decade, and it is that Alabama game, as soon as they announced it, it was just like this explosion on Twitter of all caps and exclamation points, and this is the game that everyone wants to see, and we only have to wait 7 years to see it.
In terms of LSU, given what happened with the home and home the last time the two schools played, I don't think they want any of Ohio State back in 87 and 88. So maybe one day LSU will show back up on the schedule. Alabama, and I said this, I think, when 2 years ago when Alabama and Texas agreed to a home and home. And to me, that was the sign, and it's set for, let me see Alabama's future schedule. It is set for 2022 at Texas and 2023 in Alabama. And when that was decided, that was also my hint or the proclamation that Nick Saban will not be at Alabama in 2022 because they are playing a road non-conference game, which they don't do. They do the neutral sites. Like 2021, they're in Atlanta playing Miami. This year, they're in Arlington, Jerry World, playing USC. And years past, it's been these neutral sites. And the home and home isn't something that Nick Saban did. And I think the last one he did was with Penn State in 2009, 2010. And I doubt he even scheduled that because he was, with the Dolphins or LSU when that was probably scheduled. So to me, and I understand coaches don't make the schedule, but when you're Nick Saban, you could probably say, nah. And for me, that's what he's been doing with a lot of these home and homes. And so when I see at Texas showing up in 2022, at Wisconsin in 2024, not so much at West Virginia in 2026, but at Ohio State in 2027, that tells me that Nick Saban is not going to be here certainly forever, and I don't think he'll be here past 2021 if I'm just going based off of scheduling.
Yeah, I mean, it's very clearly a significant philosophical shift. And Nick Saban, when that 2027 Ohio State game happens, he turns 76 during the middle of that football season. So there's probably multiple reasons to think that Nick Saban probably will not be the head coach there at that point for the Ohio State game. But yeah, it's certainly an interesting theory and one that I put probably a little bit of stock into just because it's been so consistent and now there's this dramatic change. And there are financial reasons that, maybe it makes more sense to do home and homes. And as a viewer from a purely aesthetic point of view, I would much rather have them play home and homes. The thing that's more interesting to me from Alabama's schedule is they have 2022, 2023, 2024. They're playing one good Power 5 team every year. Texas and at Texas, and then at Wisconsin in 2024. 2025, all of a sudden they're playing two good Power 5 teams a year. 2025, they're at Florida State, home for Wisconsin. 2026, at West Virginia, home for Florida State. 2027, home for West Virginia at Ohio State. To me, that's a pretty good indication that they look at that as very likely there is going to be an 8-team playoff or some kind of playoff expansion before then, where if you just split those two games, you're probably fine and can make the playoff with, you win the SEC, or even if you go 11-2, you lose an SEC game at some point during the season and you split those non-conference games, you're probably still making the playoff as an 11-2 kind of Alabama team. And so that to me is kind of intriguing that's, Ohio State has basically one really good Power 5 team on the schedule every year. For Alabama to have two of them in a lot of years, there's a year that they play at Notre Dame and Ohio State. That's 2028. So yeah, there's a lot of, you can do some reading of the tea leaves there in terms of the future of the sport and what Alabama thinks is coming. But yeah, that's pretty intriguing to me.
Well, and I was on the Sloopcast with Jared sitting in for Kyle this week on Monday, and we talked about this. And in fact, Jared was all, I've got this conspiracy theory, and he pointed out what you're talking about with Alabama having two teams in the 25 schedule, two Power 5 teams. Ohio State that year has Texas and Washington. So, and then after that, in 2026, it's at Texas and Boston College. 2027, Alabama and at Boston College. So it's not just Alabama. Ohio State has also added, put those two Power 5 teams in 2025. So he was saying, I've got this conspiracy theory that's when the 8-team playoff begins. I'm like, I don't know that that's a conspiracy theory. I think that's just a theory based on pretty good evidence that there is a shift coming. And, just as you said, the shift with Nick Saban scheduling, I wonder, and I put this to Jared and I'll put this to anybody, go ahead and do the research and see how many other teams, we could do it, I'm sure, but how many other, prosperous big time teams have doubled up beginning in 2025. And I would think that would tell you all you need to know, because to do that without any significant changes, it just wouldn't happen.
I'm looking at Michigan. I know we're talking about playoff contenders, so this isn't a perfect example, but Michigan in 2025, they have a home and home with Oklahoma in 2025 and 26, and then a home and home with they play Texas 2024 and 2027, and then Notre Dame in 2033 and 2034 are the only other games they have scheduled right now. So they have not exactly dived headfirst into this in the same way that Ohio State has. What's interesting is Ohio State, I don't know how much we're going to give Boston College credit for being a big-time Power 5 opponent, but the way Ohio State seems to have one kind of big-name team a year, they have two scheduled in 2025 and none scheduled for 2029. So I wonder if one of those games, either Washington or Texas from 2025, ends up getting slid to 2029 instead, and then you keep it at one.
I'm looking at USC in 2025. They begin Ole Miss and Notre Dame. Obviously, they have Notre Dame like every year. But 2024, it's San Jose State and Notre Dame. And then 2025, it goes to Ole Miss and Notre Dame. Clemson, they always play two because they have no choice because the ACC is terrible. And you've got the crossover with South Carolina. So if they have, I wouldn't say they always play two, but there's a pretty good chance that they're generally going to play two Power 5 non-conference teams, simply because they need, you kind of need practice for the playoffs, and you're not going to get it in the ACC. So that's Tom. Which let's talk about Ohio State's future schedule here, because I thought it was interesting when Ohio State sent out the release of the Alabama thing. They listed all of these Power 5 teams, and they totally left off Boston College in 2026 and 2027. So they're like, 2 games against Oregon, 2 games against Notre Dame, Washington, Alabama, Georgia. And I was like, did the Boston College series get called off? And I don't believe it has. They just thought, you know what? Nobody really cares about Boston College. And I felt that's kind of a slap in the face to both Ryan Day, to Jeff Hafley. Hafley, assuming he's still there in 2026 and not, coaching the Dallas Cowboys, you got to think that's not going to be a gimme. That's going to be fairly decent, right? I mean, got to be better than Chris Ash at Rutgers.
Way to set the bar high. Yeah, I cannot conceive of a scenario where Jeff Hafley is coaching Boston College in 2026. Jeff Hafley either succeeds at Boston College and gets a way better job long before then, or Jeff Hafley fails at Boston College and gets fired before then. I don't think there's a way he just kind of farts around like Steve Addazio does and just goes 7-5 every year and can't get a better job, but also isn't quite bad enough to get fired. He's not going to do that for 6 years. I think there's a better chance that Jeff Hafley is coaching, Texas or Georgia or Alabama or something at that point, and they see him there than Notre Dame, than at Boston College. I don't see him being someone who sticks around at Boston College. Like he is a little more upwardly mobile, I think, than someone who would be sticking around Boston College for 6 years. He's going to be in the NFL or at a far better job than Boston College if he's successful.
What about, and say he has 2 good years at Boston College, maybe 3, and that would coincide with right around the time Jim Harbaugh is like, I don't want to be here anymore, and so he leaves, and they go and hire Jeff Hafley, which would create tremendous drama. But most importantly in that is Jeff Hafley is going to have tremendous connections with Connecticut prospects, with the Massachusetts prospects, some of those Maine guys, all of those Northeast quadrants that Michigan likes to recruit from. Don Brown is going to go crazy if they can get Hafley, and now they can just corner the market on the talent-rich New England area of, man, just so much. And the accents will be great in post games. And for the Connecticut prospects alone, I think Jeff Hafley would be a shoo-in at Michigan.
Michigan likes to consider themselves the Harvard of the Midwest. What if actually they're the Boston College of the Midwest? I'm just saying, think about it. They both hate Notre Dame. I mean, it kind of fits.
The Boston College, that's pretty good. A lot of 9-win seasons and dashed hopes, and sometimes an NFL quarterback gets mixed in there. When I was going through these schedules, I'm like, oh yeah, Notre Dame is here in like 2 years. Like that's not super far out. I mean, we're already talking about 2022 recruiting, and those guys will be able to play against Notre Dame. So that's pretty cool. I've never been to Notre Dame. Ohio State goes there in 2023. Driven past it and seen some things from like the highway maybe, but I've never been. So that would be kind of looking forward to that. I mean, I was there for the 95 game. I didn't go to South Bend for the 96 game. But there's, as much as we rip on Notre Dame, it's still fun and it's still special because it's great to beat up on Notre Dame.
Yeah, I've seen a game there. I covered a game in like 2007. I think it was a John L. Smith, Charlie Weiss year. And oh yeah, it is, there was not quite all of the mystic energy that the film Rudy would have led you to believe floating around that stadium on that particular day as Charlie Weiss was getting absolutely killed by John L. Smith. It was probably like 2008, 2009, something like that. So yeah, that was it was one of those like, oh, now I've seen a game here. The atmosphere was not amazing, but it was a not particularly great Notre Dame team, and they were getting killed by Michigan State, so you'll have that. Yeah, in terms of places on this list, road trips that I'm really looking forward to, man, I am really excited about the Oregon trip this year, and I know that this is that's a little more up in the air than it was maybe 4 to 6 weeks ago, and certainly 4 to 6 months ago. But yeah, I am really looking forward to that trip. The Washington trip in 2024, I have not been out there before. That's supposed to be a really, really cool place to see a game. And then at Texas in 2025, I mean, Austin's obviously a fantastic town. The atmosphere around Darrell K. Royal Stadium is not exactly explosive, boisterous. I think it's a little more laid back. There's a little bit of a Michigan Stadium thing going on there, I think, in Texas. But you know, those are all of those are interesting, different trips in their own way. But yeah, I sure hope I'm still on the beat for the 2028 game at Alabama, 2030 at Georgia. Like those are bucket list college football stadiums, pretty much all of them. And I am really looking forward to going and seeing what should be pretty high profile games in all those different spots.
Yeah, there's still nothing for the 2029 schedule, and I'm getting worried that it's just going to be like Tulsa, FIU, and Troy. Like they're just like, you know what? Look at what we've done, and look what we still have to come. Just give us a break on 2029. Like I've had a long day. Just cool it.
Yeah, I mean they had that last year with the 2019 schedule where the TCU series went from a home and home to a one-off in 2018, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, Cincinnati's the marquee game. That's a thing. And Cincinnati turned out to be a very good team last year. I think they won 11 games and nearly won the American Conference. And, you know, that's respectable. But yeah, I'm hoping that there's some kind of a movement there where they add something impressive in there. You know, maybe they add a 2029 and 2032 kind of series against someone. That would be interesting. Yeah. I mean, stick Clemson on there, stick LSU on there. I would be into have USC play. They could play Stanford. I mean, any of those. Like there's a bunch of places that they could play that would be kind of entertaining and a little bit different.
And this is all assuming that these don't get canceled, because Ohio State has had home and homes with Tennessee and Georgia that were canceled. I think one of those was supposed to start this year, but for a number of reasons they were canceled. So it will be interesting to see who that 2029 team is. Maybe it will be Alabama in a neutral site, and we'll call it the Nick Saban. I don't want to say Memorial. Nick Saban Classic, perhaps. We'll see. Tom, let's...
The Nick Saban Emeritus Bowl. He doesn't have to be dead. He just has to be retired.
There you go. Let's get some listener questions in here and see how long we can go with these before we call it a show.
All right. First one from Big Daddy Buck 13. What do we need to be different against Clemson in the college football playoff this year, other than not leaving points on the field?
Tom, to me, they don't need to do anything different. That is to say, don't make the mistakes. That's what you need to be not doing, because they were clearly the better team than Clemson last year, and they still almost won despite all of these mistakes. And Tom, I'm going to say that the controversial take is they should have won, but the refs were not great in that game, and the replay officials were a little aggressive. They probably should have been flagged for targeting themselves.
Yeah, what's the answer here? Big 12 refs in the replay booth? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like last year, coming away from that game, I was struck by, like, if any of 10 different things had gone differently, like plays that they almost made, or calls that could have gone a different way, or decisions that were made by Ryan Day at certain points, like any of 10 different things could have gone differently and they win. You know, there was a fumbled punt, a muffed punt right at the end of the game, and it was like, if they just fall on that, they win. Mm-hmm. There were so many different things, and all of them had to go against them for them to lose, and they all did. So, yeah, I came away from that game last year with a very clear idea that Ohio State was the better of those two teams, and it just didn't happen for them. Like, if they play that game 10 times, Ohio State probably wins 7 or 8 of them. Mm-hmm. But that was one of those 2 or 3 that didn't happen. So, yeah, don't drop passes. Don't punt the ball on 4th and 3. Don't
get ejected.
Don't get called for targeting. Don't have a scoop and score overturned on a bad replay. There's, there are a bunch of lessons you could take away from that. But yeah, I don't know, other than not leaving points on the field, I don't know what else they really needed to do, because they played well enough to win for virtually all of the game, and then they didn't. Next one is also from Big Daddy Buck 13. Who backs up Justin Fields this year? Gunnar Hoke, C.J. Stroud, or Jack Miller?
Tom, I think you and I both agree that it's going to be Gunnar Hoke, unless one of these 2 freshmen just come out of nowhere, because they have had no spring. They'll get like 10 days of simulated spring before workouts and everything get underway, so that will be good. But to expect one of those 2 guys to be the backup this year, when the backup needs to be settled in camp, to me that's an unwinnable situation unless you just have an absolute freak. And granted, they have one starting right now, Justin Fields. I don't know that C.J. Stroud or Jack Miller is that. And, Justin Fields wasn't that as a true freshman, so you shouldn't expect either of these guys to be that. Now, granted, trying to beat out Gunnar Hoke is a little bit different than trying to beat out Justin Fromm. We understand that. But I think asking a true freshman to beat out a guy who has now been in the offense for a year is a lot, especially when all of these kids, these 2 freshmen, have been able to do is watch film, look at the playbook, and throw to their cousin.
With a spring practice, I would have expected one of the freshmen to at least make a pretty good run at the starting job. But yeah, without spring ball, I think that's a very difficult thing to expect them to do. Because, then you're essentially having guys come in almost as regular enrollees, summer enrollees, more or less, and expect them to be able to, pick up the playbook quickly enough and be ready to play both physically and mentally. And, you don't know exactly what kind of shape these guys are in after being home for so long. I think that's just asking a lot. And so, yeah, during a normal year, I probably would have gone with maybe C.J. Stroud as the guy. But, yeah, I think you have to kind of play it safe and assume it's Gunnar Hoke based on having an additional year in the system and being a college student for a number of years already. That's just probably the safe bet right now.
And I don't even like going with one freshman over the other because I haven't seen them. We saw them once in their first spring practice. So I don't know. And if we want to make a judgment, then I guess you base that on recruiting rankings, Tom, which are always correct. So I guess you're right. That would be a safe assumption that C.J. Stroud is the next starting quarterback at Ohio State.
And we did get to see one entire practice, so you have to weigh that pretty. Yeah, you have to weigh that pretty.
I don't know what more evidence we would need.
Yeah. Next one from K-Shed. Troy Smith, Terrell Pryor, Braxton Miller, J.T. Barrett, Dwayne Haskins, and Justin Fields are all hanging out. They decide they're going to go out to head out for some fun. There's one SUV for them all to ride in together. Who grabs the keys and is driving? Who is sitting shotgun? Who gets stuck with the middle seat? Who gets stuck in the trunk? And for this exercise, they are all the age they were as the starting quarterback for OSU to negate deferring to the elder.
This is probably deeper than it needs to be in terms of how you answer this. But for me, it's like I think JT is going to grab the keys and is going to drive. And you can make the jokes whatever you want. But to me, for one, I think Troy Smith, Terrell, Braxton, they're okay sitting shotgun because I don't want to say there's some prima donna to them, but they don't mind being, escorted around. But which of them is sitting shotgun? Probably the one with the Heisman. The middle seat, like, are we talking about in the back seat? So like 3 guys are in the back seat. So that would be, Dwayne Haskins has to be in the back seat. Terrell Pryor's in the back seat. You can't put any of these guys in the trunk. I think you got to go 4. I think you got to go 4 wide in the back. Or don't you have a third row, Tom? Can't you get one guy in the third row?
Yeah, I think this is an SUV issue more than a quarterback issue. See, to me, I think Troy Smith is, he can pull rank. He has the Heisman. I think he's driving, and in terms of perception at the time, I don't know if anyone, even Troy Smith, had the perceived level of stardom that Terrell Pryor did. I don't know. Outside of Troy Smith, who can, like I said, pull rank with the Heisman and getting them to a national championship game and all that, I think you could probably, I would probably have Troy driving and Terrell riding shotgun just based on the perception at the time. But yeah, I think people forget how big a star Terrell Pryor was at that time, and obviously it didn't play out the way people probably would have wanted it to, but. Yeah, he was a pretty much certified phenomenon from day one in a way that, Braxton Miller also played a good amount as a true freshman, but it was not the Terrell Pryor freshman year was not the Braxton Miller freshman year. And, that's I think that's probably the tiebreaker to me. But yeah, there are not a lot of bad choices here. And you know what? You could throw Cardale Jones in this car too, and I don't know where he sits. That's a pretty that is a car loaded with football players of quite some esteem.
Being 6'5", I don't think he can fit in that third row, so you're gonna have to put him somewhere in that second row.
Next one from K Shed. This was my favorite question because it takes such a turn. You get invited to dinner at the highly acclaimed restaurant, The Refectory. You are seated with all the living head coaches from Ohio State, with John Cooper, Jim Tressel, Luke Fickell, Urban Meyer, and Ryan Day. What are you ordering? It's like, oh, that's not where I expected that question to go. I pulled up the Refectory menu. I'm guessing you have not dined at the Refectory recently, nor have I. Our appetizer choices: there's a farmer's green salad with roasted walnuts, blue cheese, and maple syrup vinaigrette. A French country terrine with duck bacon, cornichons, Griotine
Cornish
cherries,
hens,
Griotine cherries, and gourmet vinaigrette. Yeah, this is a very fancy French restaurant on Bethel Road in Columbus, and the menu features a number of words that are not words that you typically see on menus where I dine. So I'm personally going to go with the chilled shrimp and corn salad, which is $12 with a tomato and chive mousseline. They also have the beet and apple salad with Corsican feta, champagne vinaigrette, and an asparagus soup. I've got to say, I don't mind asparagus. I have never had asparagus soup. And then as far as the entrees, marinated chicken breast, roasted Cajun duck breast, baked Norwegian salmon, full or half rack of lamb, a duet of filet and gambas. Confession, I do not know what gambas is. Or a vegetarian or vegan entree. Pass. And Gerd, for you, the children's options are pasta with chicken and pasta with beef medallion. I've got to go with the lamb. The lamb sounds pretty good.
I would go with the boneless wings. Do they have those?
No, they do not. Desserts: salted caramel New York style cheesecake, triple chocolate torte, vanilla cream creme brulee, and a strawberry meringue. Yes, a feuillantine. Yes, that is a thing that I have definitely heard of before this exact moment. Yes. I'm going to go with the cheesecake. How about you? You seem like a feuillantine man.
I am clicking on these menus, and they're like, look at the menu, and I'm clicking on them, and they're not giving me a menu. I do see this thing that is like some sort of a chocolate cake with possibly some peanut butter, with some other sugary things. It looks pretty good, with maybe some raspberry and banana foam or something. It looks good. I probably wouldn't necessarily spend like $28 on it, which I assume is what it would cost. But unless they're a sponsor, then I totally would. We here love the Refectory and recommend that you all go there.
I heartily endorse this Inventor product. Question. This is from 7Bobo6. When recruiting rankings are wrong, in which ways are they most typically wrong? What is the most likely way that evaluators miss? Is it certain positions that are more likely to be evaluated poorly, missing the drive or the want to of the player, not accounting for injuries, etc.? I had Bill Green on the Morning Scoop last week to talk about this. He has a list of, I believe it's 32 rules for recruiting, and it addresses a lot of this stuff. That is a fantastic piece, and you should, if you were a member of Buckeye Scoop, you should definitely read that. That was one of those things where I read it and felt like I came away learning a lot. But, offensive line is a tough spot to evaluate because there's a lot of development required there. You generally do not have guys coming fully formed out of high school ready to be offensive linemen. So there's both physical and technical and mental development involved there. Offensive line is a tough place to evaluate a lot of times. Running back is a place where you have to see guys in games. You can't see them in camps. Like what they're doing in camps does not necessarily translate to games. So that's a tough place to evaluate guys sometimes. And I mean, quarterback, there's so much development that goes into being a quarterback that's a place where, it's hard to think of in terms of the Ohio State end of things, because it's like, yes, Justin Fields panned out. Yes, Dwayne Haskins panned out. Yes, Joe Burrow panned out. But there's a lot of places that have 5-star quarterbacks who don't end up turning into anything just because they don't get developed, or they are just missing some piece of the puzzle to not be able to do it. So those are, and one thing that Bill mentioned was, if guys are getting hurt in high school and can't stay healthy in high school, it's very likely that they're not going to be able to stay healthy at the college level. And that's, that's too bad. But if your body's not able to hold up to the stresses of high school level play, it's yet not a huge surprise probably that it's going to be tough to do it at the college level.
One other thing I'll mention with the offensive line, I go back to Connor Smith, who was a 5-star offensive lineman, offensive tackle out of Cincinnati. He went to the Army All-American game, and was pretty exposed in terms of his pass blocking ability because he didn't do it in high school because they ran the triple option and all of that stuff. And then you see a similar thing with Josh Myers, who was a 5-star guy and out of a running offense and went to an All-American game and in camps got exposed a little bit in terms of the pass blocking. And so his recruiting ranking dropped, but he was okay with that. He turned out all right because he was still able to find a role and obviously kept working and had the talent to become what he has become. And the style, the offenses and defenses that these guys play in will also play a part. And maybe they don't get taken into account as they should, like Connor Smith. Like, he might be a 5-star run blocker. Is he a 3-star pass blocker? Wouldn't that make him a 4-star offensive lineman? And then, some of the small school guys, how do you even know how good they are when they're only facing other small school guys? That was one of the things that Julian Fleming's coach told me. Now, they're from Catawissa, Pennsylvania, a town of like 1,500 people. And he was like, I knew he was good. I knew Julian Fleming was good, but I didn't know how good because I've never had anybody this good. And he's only going against area talent. And then he told me, like, he didn't realize he didn't have his question answered until he saw Julian Fleming doing the same thing at the Under Armour All-American game in practice against 4 and 5-star prospects. That was when he truly knew, like, okay, I was right about this kid. He's really darn good, because he finally got to see him do it against upper echelon talent.
Yeah, and that's one of the things where wide receiver and corner, those are spots where you actually can maybe do some evaluation at a camp or at a clinic or like an all-star game, because you are seeing guys in a kind of one-on-one situation. A running back, it's just, can he hit the hole? Can he make the first guy miss? And that's not always something you can see at a in a camp setting. There's a lot of it that's goes a lot that goes into being a running back that you can't see in a camp setting. So
I hate those. Go ahead.
No. So that's why one of the reasons that, there are certain positions that are easier to evaluate in certain circumstances, and others that can be where that information can be almost useless.
I hate the one-on-ones with the running backs and linebackers or defensive backs or whomever, defenders at these camps, because the running back is just trying to juke and dodge, and sometimes they'll even go move backwards, and it's like, okay, that's one defender. There are 10 other defenders on the field that will be coming towards you. So this does nothing. This is all meaningless. All of this one-on-one stuff that if you're a running back, you don't have a lot of one-on-ones unless they throw a swing out to you and everybody else is being blocked perfectly. And the idea of these one-on-ones, it's basically just, I think, for Twitter and to have some oohs and ahs, but it's meaningless. I mean, yeah, you juke that guy, but while you were dancing around, the defensive tackle actually caught up with you, and now you are out of the game because your head is in the stands.
Yeah, the defensive tackle has hit you from behind, and the football is now embedded in your abdomen. So yes, but it looks great on Twitter. So
yep.
Next one from Mount P Buckeye. What game will indicate that this OSU team is ready to win a national title, and how they have to play in that game to convince you guys?
I think that's Oregon, right?
Yeah, I mean Oregon, or if Oregon doesn't happen, Penn State.
State, yeah.
Yeah, those are both games Ohio State should win. You're both in very hostile atmospheres that are not going to probably be as hostile this year, just based on crowd size and all of that. So go on the road to one or both of those and win convincingly. Win them by 10 points, 14 points. That will show me a lot. But go on the road and win no matter what. Yes, but if they go on the road and win by 10 points and really kind of assert their dominance over another kind of top 10 team on the road, that would show me a lot.
Kind of like 98 at West Virginia, where both teams are ranked, and it was the biggest game in West Virginia history, and Ohio State went there and had their way with them pretty good. Or the way the Buckeyes opened at Virginia Tech in 2015 with some pretty special moments, something like that. Just assert your dominance and let the Ducks and the Nittany Lions roll over onto their backs and expose their bellies.
All right, last one from Great Day. Since it's been a couple of weeks now at the Scoop, and you both were pretty much the jacks of all trades with recruiting and team coverage at our old gig, how much nicer is it to work with Mark, Bill, and Nevada? I would also add Mick Walker in there, by the way. Same, or do you feel more in the loop now when it comes to the recruiting side, or just not bother with it at all since it's covered? I will tell you, and Alex, yeah, and Alex too. Goodness, yes. To me, the recruiting side, I feel way more in the loop now, because when we were kind of doing everything, you can do everything and do it all okay and be reasonably up to speed on everything. But just in terms of hours in the day, you don't have time to do everything that Mark and Bill and Alex and Mick are doing every day, where they're going and scouting in person. They're talking to guys in person. They're visiting these high schools. They're visiting these camps when camps open up. That's obviously not been an issue. This has been something that happened this year, but you end up seeing more in person, not just looking at guys on highlight reels. Like everyone looks good on their highlight reel, so that's a tough way to try and evaluate people. If you can see them in person, that makes a huge difference. And yeah, just being able to talk to those guys about what they've seen, what they've heard. Yeah, that's made a huge difference in I feel like my level of information on a lot of these different things. What about you?
It might not surprise you, Tom, to let you know I'm a little bit of opposite of you. In fact, when I sat down to do the Sloopcast on Sunday to record it, Jared was like, how comfortable are you with 2022 recruiting? And we're doing this via Zoom, and he sees the blank look in my face, and he's like, "Oh, okay, so you're not comfortable talking about 2022 recruiting." I'm like, "You got to understand, like since we joined the Scoop, I was able to shut that off for a little bit, just to be able to concentrate on some other things. So, I I crimped the recruiting hose a little bit in terms of at least the 2022 guys. I'm fine with the 2021 guys, but I crimped the hose a little bit, and now I need to uncrimp it and get back into it because I didn't have to worry about it. And it's not that I don't care about it or I don't enjoy it, because I do. It's just I just stopped the flow for a little bit, and I could tell you some names, but like I was listening to Gives in the Bank talking about 2022 and 2023 Ohio kids as I'm like playing the Xbox. I'm like, I should go watch highlights of those guys, and I'm vegging out, and I need to. I will be getting back into it, but just the lack of a need for me to be focused on that. I don't know. I took a vacation from recruiting, but I'll be back at it. It's just, they know, like this guy knows, Great Day, that we are now, we now have the luxury of this great recruiting staff. And so I was able to step away for a little bit. And don't worry, I'm not going to be lazy about everything. I will get back to recruiting and at least being able to talk about it, the 2022. And, Tom, maybe next week we'll talk about the 2024 class. How's that sound?
That sounds great. I think those kids are in like middle school right now, so should be incredible. Yeah, I will give the Gives in the Bank podcast a plug here. Those guys are two of the absolute best at what they do and know so many coaches and so many players and just have so many incredible contacts and have seen so many of these guys that there's really, really good insight. If you are into recruiting, the more you like Ohio State football and the more you like following recruiting, the more you'll like that podcast, the more you'll like subscribing to Buckeye Scoop. There's just an absolute fire hose of information from people who are so plugged in that it's really, really valuable. And the Alex Gleitman will be on the Morning Scoop podcast on Tuesday, so it will be out by the time you're hearing this. He's going to be talking about one of Ohio State's top remaining offensive line targets after J.C. Latham left. So he has some insight on that. So you want to check out the Morning Scoop podcast as well for that.
It is fun, Tom, though, when I'll see a random, or a tweet from the Buckeye Scoop at Buckeye Scoop account and see a story that I want to read and be like, all right, I'll go check that out. I would like to read that. I would like to find out, Tristan Lee, really 5-star guy, and they're in contact. Oh, well, what's this about? So it is funny when stuff like that pops up and you're interested in it. As somebody who I guess I could have just looked at the back end and saw it was coming, but I like to be surprised.
If you are interested in also being surprised, you can join BuckeyeScoop.com today. They have you can get access to all of the content, all of the articles, the insider message board, and if you do it before July 4th, you can be part of the Founders Club. They have benefits, special benefits. I think access to events and some other stuff that you will only be able to get if you sign up before July 4th. So I would recommend you do that because it seems like it is shaping up to be a pretty exciting Ohio State football season. You're going to want to join it anyway, so you might as well join it now and get all those additional benefits rather than waiting like 3 more weeks and then going, hey, I should do this and missing out. So
yeah,
that's just my recommendation. Do it now.
Yeah, do it now, and then you don't have to. It's not new for you when if you wait until the season, you'll know the community, you'll know everybody, and it'll be. I mean, it's well worth it, and you'll enjoy it. I think that'll do it for us, Tom. I want to thank you all for listening. Make sure to check out the rest of the shows on the Scoop Radio Network, and there's a ton of interesting and different shows. So available via all of your normal platforms. Kirk Barton's Scoop World Order. The Jim Tressel interview is tremendous. Go listen to that, and the Orlando Pace is just as good. And there's more coming. Some crazy names. So look for that, and we will talk to you guys later.